Welcome to the Rock the Stage Show. Each week, international media expert Rich Bontrager has in-depth and personal conversations with celebrities, top leaders, authors, speakers, and media professionals. Now, from the Rock the Stage studios, here's your host, the Trigger, Rich Bontrager.
Welcome back to the Rock the Stage Show. It's happy 2026, a new year here. Can you believe it? It's always exciting the first couple of weeks to see how the new year shakes out. The old is gone, the new is in, but what does the new really have in store for you? Well, new leadership might be something you're thinking about and how to deal with your leadership and how things are always changing. You know, what if the secret to stronger leadership had nothing to do with being in control and it had everything to do with improving more? Today, we're going to dive into how to think on your feet, embracing the unexpected and saying yes and how it can turn chaos into clarity, fear into momentum, and teams into more creative powerhouses. I'm talking about no scripts, no rigid playbooks on leadership, just being more in the moment. Just real leadership skills that work with the plane when the plan all falls apart, and if you're ever faced with that big challenge and you don't see what's coming next. So tonight, we're going to improvise on Rock the Stage Show. My guest tonight is Avish Parashar. He's an expert in using yes and mindset to help leaders and teams unlock brilliance in moments of change. A keynote speaker, an author, and an improviser with over 30 years of experience, he blends the laugh out loud improv comedy with the practical leadership strategies. It's going to transform apathy into excitement for many people and many leaders. Avish's message has helped organizations across the country thrive through uncertainty and create culture of creativity, collaboration, and possibility. Welcome to the Rock the Stage Show, Avish Parashar, and let's have him come on in right now. Avish, welcome.
Hello, Rich. Thank you. What a fabulous introduction. Thank you.
You've been introduced how many different times? How many different ways? How many different ways have they said your last name? By the way, let's just get that out of the way because my name's Bontrager, Butcher. How about yours?
It's been a number. Every once in a while you get someone who you don't even know how their mind got there. Usually you can see, all right, you put the emphasis here, you mispronounce the A here, but sometimes you're like, well, that's not even what's written on the paper. But hey, as an improviser, you just sort of smile and roll with it. Never get offended by it.
I was gonna say, as an improviser, it really helps you every time get ready to go up there. I really don't know what they're gonna say about me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, what do they say and how can I use it? It's the worst though is it's funny. The improv. The worst is when they read an introduction, but they read my bio, which is not what I send them to do for my intro.
Yes.
And it's like a page long and it's really boring. It's good for like written, and I'm like, oh no, why are you reading that? They just went to my website and grabbed my bio. I was like, oh no.
If people don't know about you, Avish, I want to mention that your journey blends improv comedy and leadership strategy. Let's just put that out right away. We're blending two universes together. But what was the big aha moment where you knew that improv wasn't just for entertainment anymore, but it was a tool to use for leadership and organization? When would that click for you?
Like so many things, it clicked for me because of somebody else. So I was doing workshops I was running an improv group, and this guy who ran like high school programs hired me to do some workshops with his high school kids. He also had an event company, and he said, hey, what you're doing there looks like it could be a good corporate team building event. And that was when aha hit me. Well, it's funny, actually, it goes back now that we're improvising. There was a second sort of piece of this.
Yeah.
That's when I really realized here's how I could sell it to businesses. But I forgot the way it really came about is years before this, when I was just running the improv group, my goal was to turn it into something huge, right? Like an institution, the second city of Philadelphia. So I started reading everything I could on motivation and success and goal setting and marketing and leadership. And I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, great book.
Yep.
And as I'm reading it, what I'm thinking is, oh, I could see how these 7 habits would help me teach improv comedy better. And so that kind of got that direction, right? From business to improv. And then I think when he sort of mentioned that, then I'm like, oh, well, if I can use business principles to teach better improv, why can't I use improv to teach better business? And so kind of combining those two things is where the aha moment happened.
How many times do you think Stephen Covey has helped somebody with aha moments just from that one book? How many people do you think?
Oh yeah, yes. If you're reading the book and paying attention, pretty much everyone who reads that book should get some aha.
Many leaders feel stuck, especially what we're going through right now. Since pandemic and on, a lot of leaders are stuck. They're frozen. They can't change. They pivot. I hate the word pivot. But what are the biggest mistakes you've seen that make the yes and a tough shift for them?
I think it's two things. It's one is they're thinking too big. What I mean is they not big in terms of possibility. I'm all for giant thing. What I think is they want to have the whole plan figured out. They're in uncertainty. They want to know what's going to happen. Let's lay it all out before I make a move. And in improv and in the world with everything being so uncertain, it's like, maybe 20, 30 years ago, it's like the people who won were the ones who had the best plan and executed. Now it's like, let's get an idea and let's just try something and figure it out and see what happens and then make an adjustment and then sort of repeat as we go. So the first thing is a small step. The second thing is that they think, I don't know what the best term for this is, unilaterally or didactically. They think like, I'm the leader, I need the solution, and I'm going to proclaim it to my people, and they're going to implement this plan I came up with.
I came down
in improv.
I came down from Mount Olympus and I got it all figured out.
Exactly. It's like I just literally. I mean, we talk about this before. I'm working on a new book, and my editor just compliments one line I hear. It's like they come down like Moses from the mountaintop with a tablet. It's like, here's the 10 commandments you got to do, or 15 if you're a Mel Brooks fan, but that's a whole different story. And so they come and they think that I'm going to have this brilliant idea, and my people are going to be on board with it. And what I've seen both in the work I've done and interviewing people for the book and my podcast and things like that is the best leaders are the ones who simply ask questions and listen to the answers.
It's amazing how being in the moment helps great leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Many leaders think, like you said, they have to pre-figure it out, and they don't know how to go off script. They don't know how to go on the adventure that bumped in the face, literally, and go, oh, that's what we're supposed to do next. Why do they were resistant to that jump in the moment?
I think it's a lot of insecurity and fear. I think the messages that we are given growing up is that having the right answer is the most valuable thing. I mean, this is what you learn in school, right?
Yeah.
You get taught, you take a test, you have the right answer, you did good. If you didn't, you did bad. So this translates then as we become adults into saying, I don't know is a bad thing. Making a mistake is a bad thing. Asking for help is a bad thing, right? There's like this rugged individualism. So I think every message we are taught from our youth, probably all the way through college, if you go to college and into leadership, is about not looking weak, about not looking wrong, about not making mistakes. And all those things are the antithesis of good leadership.
So you teach about yes and.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people talk about yes. I've had people talk about what if, but what's yes and all about?
So yes and is this fundamental principle in the world of improv comedy. When you learn improv, it's one of the first things you learn. And it's simply that when in improv, we have these things called offers. So if you and I were doing an improv game together, anything I said to you would be an offer. Like, oh, hey, Rich, let's go get some ice cream. That's an offer. Now, you have a choice now as my partner. You can say yes and to it, which is the good improv response. Or you can say no or yes, but. And if you say no or yes, but, what you're doing is shooting down my idea. Like, hey, let's get some ice cream. Yeah, but I'm on a diet. I don't want to get ice cream. Now, you think you're introducing conflict, but you're doing it in a way that's shutting down the story. It's not moving things forward. But if you were to say, yes, and we need to do it secretly because I'm on a diet and I don't want my wife to find out. Now you've accepted my offer.
Yep.
We know where the scene is going. And you've added this interesting element of like, now it's on a secret. So yes, and in improv is a way of collaborating and opening up creativity at the same time, which then offstage translates to the same benefit in our work and our communication, our personal lives.
And that's where leaders often do, yeah, but, and you do feel the gate close and you're done with the conversation versus yes, and is a much better way to lead, right?
Yes. And it all sort of falls into the same thing about the insecurity, because we think as leaders, then our job is to correct our people. So you come with an idea. It's like, oh yeah, but let me tell you why that won't work. And it's usually done well-intentioned. I'm not trying to rip you down. It's just, I've got 20 years experience. You've been working for 3. Let me share with you. Let me save you some time by telling you why your idea won't work. And sometimes we need to give people the runway to fail because that's how they learn. That's how they grow. And then sometimes they succeed when we thought they would fail.
But I think one of the other fears of a leader is that we say yes and they're translated as like, great, I can run all over you. I've got free reign. And that's not what they're saying with yes and, right?
Yeah, yes and is a mindset. It's not literal. So you don't agree to everything. It's just because there's another way of using it, right? And the improv way on stage is really, I'm going to accept what you say and add to it.
Yeah.
In the real world, though, we can use it as a conversational tool to pivot and get curious. So instead of saying, if you're like, hey, why don't we just give away all our product for free? Instead of saying, yeah, and let's throw in $20 on top of that. It's like, well, okay, that's an interesting idea, Rich. Why do you want to do that? Like, tell me more about that. What do you think is going to be the benefit? How would that even work? Instead of me immediately saying, yeah, but that's dumb and we can't do that, and shutting the idea down and hurting the morale in the relationship, I'm going to start from a place of curiosity. Because we know, that when someone comes to you, a lot of times the idea they're saying or the objection they're voicing,
Yes.
it's not the real thing.
No.
It's something deeper. And when you say yes, but you are keeping the focus on that top level thing that may not even matter. But when you say yes, and you can dig deeper and connect and listen.
Well, and the listening is the key skill. Active listening as a leader opens you up to everything else you're talking about. And I'm sure with improv, you got to be really listening to pick up on the cues, the one-liners, things like that of knowing how you want to play along, right?
Yes, if you want to do it well. Because there's plenty of people who will do improv and not really even pay that much attention to their partner because they'll get their agenda in their head or their joke they want to get out.
Yes.
The best improvisers, though, and even if I have an idea for my joke or where I want the scene or story to go, I'm just in the moment. And if you say something that redirects it, I'm just going to build off of that, which kind of ties back into this whole thing about dealing with change.
Yes.
Because it's when I'm presented with new information as an improviser, I'm going to let go of my original idea and adapt. In the world, as a leader, if you have your plan, but then the world changes, so many, both leaders and employees, their only thought, first and only, is how do I stick to my original plan, even though things have changed? Versus, things have changed. What do we need to adapt? How can we shift? What do we need to change to take advantage of this situation?
Well, and that's where team collaboration comes in. And I remember doing a weekend retreat, and I took a box of Legos, and we're doing the next evolution of what we were going to become. And we put them in the team, and I broke up the main team and the sub teams. I said, build the future of what we're going to be with Legos. And they all came back, and they all had to explain what they built and why they built it. The whole idea was a great thing. They all got bought in. They got excited. The vision came alive. And what we took away was an amalgam of all the great stuff they put into it to really go to the future. Not my future, something else that came out of it. Does that also happen with creatives like this, with the improv? We get to where we didn't know we were going to get better?
100%. So I do when I'm doing more of a workshop, maybe less of a keynote, I'll run through this improv game called the expert interview, where you pretend to be an expert on something you know nothing about. And it shows anyone can do it if they just simply open their mouth and start talking, right? If you try to think of something funny, it won't work. But the point of this is that what I tell people is you have to speak longer. You have to basically get to a point where you've exhausted your conscious mind. And then you start blurting out the most random things because you literally have nothing in your head.
Yes.
But that's when your subconscious ideas pop out. And that, like you said, is where the real creativity lies. It's when you're stepping into uncertainty.
And then you get someplace you didn't know you could ever get to. It's the feeling to go, how do we get here? We're not in Kansas anymore.
Which is creativity, because think about it. If you have a problem you are struggling with or a goal you've been trying to achieve for a long time and can never get there, literally it means that if the answer was in your conscious mind, you'd already have it. So you almost by definition have to get beyond your conscious to new ideas that you're not even aware of right now, because you'd have the solution otherwise.
Now, when we say improv and leadership, I'm sure some people watching, listening right now, we're going to say those two can't go together. I'm not funny. I don't want to be funny. I need to be taken serious. Improv is not about being funny. Let's distinguish that, right?
Correct. So in 30 plus years of doing and teaching improv, I've never taught someone how to be funnier per se. Actually, going back to this exercise, this expert interview exercise, what's amazing is when I tell people they're going to play this game with partners, a lot of them in their heads are like, I can't do that. But when I explain, it's just open your mouth and flow and see what happens. Just about every single person in the room ends the experience having done a great job, surprising themselves and saying funny stuff. Because when you tap your creativity, the natural humor comes out. So, number one, everyone can be funny. Number two, the techniques of improv are not about how to be funny like a stand-up comedian, but how to explore and express your creativity, and then how do you direct it.
Yes. Now, one of the tools you use is a bell. You have a dinger, and the dinger helps people transition, hand off, play parts, keep the story going. Explain the power of the dinger, and does that intersect with leadership?
Well, so the dinger is kind of how I open my keynotes. Is I get a volunteer up, I hand them the bell, and I start telling a story that I make up. Anytime the volunteer wants, they can ring the bell. They go ding. When they do, I have to stop and change my story.
Texas. In Texas, there lived a man named John, and there lived a girl named Sally. And Sally wanted to be a cowboy, but unfortunately, back in the day, women were not allowed to be cowboys. Unfortunately, back in the day, women were not allowed out of the houses. Unfortunately, back in the day, women were always pregnant.
Now, it's a fun, funny, high-energy way to kick off a program, but the metaphor is that this is how life works. We are going along, we think we've got things under control, we're finally on top of it all, and then ding, the universe says, deal with this now. Or as I like to say, sometimes ding happens. And, the people, I'm not against plans and, people hear improv and they think it's about winging everything. And it's not. I'm all for plans, even scripts and things like that. It's just having the ability to let go of those when ding happens. When a curveball comes up, when you get an unexpected response, or when the world changes because of COVID or AI or a political shift or economic shift. Can you change and adapt when you need to?
And that's huge for our world today. Can you change and adapt? Not lose your mind, not go crazy, but still go forward as a leader in an organization. It's mission critical right now, isn't it?
It is. And that's where the yes and comes in. It's a real simple diagnostic tool. When a change happens, is your first response to say, yeah, but we were going to do things this way, or yeah, but this is not fair, or to say, yes, this happened and let's figure it out, or yes, this happened and here's what we're going to try next.
Now, you did do a TEDx talk. What was that experience of staying on the dot and doing what you do?
It was an awesome experience. It's one of the, as an improviser, it's probably one of the most rehearsed programs I've done.
Yes.
Because of the time. When you're got more time, there's a little more flexibility, but it's like, there's a timer right in front of you. You got 18 minutes for my talk, and the opportunity is there if they got a huge platform if it goes well. Thankfully it went great in my opinion. The audience was awesome. I tell you, the pro and the con, the good stroke to my ego is they had me go last because they knew my program was fun and good and high energy and all. But then I had to sit there for like 3 hours and just like a little bit of stress building and building. I did practice all of my like techniques I teach others about calming down and managing my emotions. Man, I was just ready to go.
You were wound up and like, come on, let's go.
I was, but the adrenaline spike and drop, I probably went up and down like 4 times before I even got onto the red dot.
I watched some of your videos and some of your material, and if I remember right, you did have somebody interrupt and kind of shout out of the audience. Usually TED Talks, they don't really interrupt you in the middle of a TED Talk.
Yeah, well, I opened that with that ding game.
Yeah.
Same thing. And, to prove it was improvised, I asked the audience for a suggestion, like, what's a job I should make this story about? And I think in the TED Talk, it was a TEDx talk, it was chiropractor. So my story was about a chiropractor. And, it's like it's leading by example, right? Just like a leadership technique. I have to like walk my talk and be like, yep, this is improvised. So I'm going to prove it right here.
Well, and talking about proving it, improvising is about being present, being in that moment. And we're talking about a lot of being in the moment, but it's not perfection. Some leaders really struggle with that. If I'm going to step out, if I'm going to say it, It's got to be perfect. How can they get past that idea of presence, be in the moment, lead well, but don't worry about being perfect today?
One of the things is think about what is your big picture goal. And the way I do this with improv is all these improv games have rules, like you can only use 2 words, or you can't use the letter S, or you have to speak in gibberish. And some performers get so focused on the rule that they forget the actual goal, which is to entertain the crowd. So sometimes when you make a mistake in the rule in an improv game, it's more fun than if you do it exactly right. Same thing with leaders. Is your goal to be perfect, or is your goal to lead your team? Is it to increase sales? Like, what is the goal? And when you realize that, that's the logical piece behind it, right? The logical step is realizing that being perfect is not your goal. It's to connect with your people as a leader. And you're going to connect less if you try to be perfect, right? I think we want to see that vulnerability and, hey, I don't know
Yeah.
everything. Let's work it out together. The emotional side, frankly, I think comes from getting practice, not being perfect. And this is where the small step thing comes into play again. If the very first time I tried to not be perfect was my TEDx talk, uh, the stakes are too high, right? That's a bad place. But having done hundreds of improv shows before then, where you just go out and
Yeah.
I mean, improv doesn't always work. At its best, it doesn't always work. And you kind of learn that it's not the end of the world. And so as a leader, maybe don't make your big annual presentation where you're announcing layoffs as the time where you're like, I'm gonna not care. Maybe it's the staff meeting with 10 people and be like, all right, well, let me try a little thing here. Let me just, instead of having a script, let me just write one bullet point note on my outline and just talk about it for 5 minutes and see how it goes, and then repeat. And with those tests, you have to analyze what happened and then make an adjustment and then repeat. So little steps at a time in failure, as opposed to trying to do the whole thing at once.
Now you've taken the yes and you've worked with the government, you've worked with healthcare, different industries. I'm kind of
Mhm.
curious, which industry maybe surprised you the most of being the most open to these concepts that we're talking about? Was there one that you went in going, they're never going to get it? Oh my gosh, they fully embraced it?
I would say that in terms of and I apologize. I feel like every time you ask me a question, I'm like, well, there's 2 answers to that. I would say there's 2 answers to this. One is from the delivery standpoint, because it's very interactive and funny. I get volunteers. And I have, maybe it's my own kind of limitation or stereotype. I have felt that the more sort of blue collary workers would be less responsive to that.
Okay.
But I have found I've done a few just recently, like these manufacturing groups and public works groups, probably 80% male. And I'm thinking they're all going to sit with the arms crossed. And man, they got into it. And I think it's just people in general, they like humor. They like to laugh. And
Yes.
I don't ask anyone to do anything too crazy in a keynote. So since I'm asked to do small things, they give it a try. And once they give it a try and see it works, they're like, oh, this was fun. So from a delivery standpoint, I think the blue collar manufacturing is the most surprising. From a content standpoint, the idea of improvising, I think it's the government employees. I always assumed that the government employees would be sort of rigid, sort of bureaucratic, sort of opposed to the idea of going with the flow. But they love it. Like they see the benefit. Obviously, it's not about breaking rules or going against policy, but they just love the idea of being in the moment, of serving the citizens and the public they're trying to help, and how the more present you are and how you can be. I think what I found in government is they all have a belief that, yeah, there are rules, but there's a lot of flexibility within those rules, and I think they really appreciate learning about that.
With leaders facing so much change right now, the rapid change is, we've got new tech every day. We've got new
Mhm.
strategies coming out. We've had financial woes, and the next day we're back up flying high again. But what's the one question you think leaders should ask themselves to maybe help them navigate all that before they jump in? What should they do to address these rapid changes and lead well as an improviser?
Well, would it be wrong for me to give you 2 answers to that
No,
question?
this is your show, man. You can do anything that we are improvising today. It's
I might even have 3 depending on the type of leader. So the first question I would have a leader ask themselves is not even to ask themselves. The first is I would have them ask their people, hey, this change is happening. What do you think we should do? Or where do you see the challenges are? So number 1, get outside your head, be present with others. But number 2, I would have a leader ask 2 questions depending on their disposition and where they are in terms of their business. If they're struggling or they're not as comfortable right now, I would say, what is the opportunity in this change? How, or the way I like to phrase it is, what can I do to make our experience better after the change than it was before? And I call this going better, not back. Because when change happens, number one, we resist change because we assume our condition will be worse after the change than before. And so if you say, how can I make it better? That resolves that. And when we're going through a change, most people's first instincts is to say, well, how can we get back to where we were? And instead say, how can we make the new reality even better than the old one we liked? So I think
Well,
that's the.
no, that's
No,
a
go ahead.
great concept because we always hear people say we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. Now
Yeah.
you're freeing up a whole different mindset here.
Yeah. It's how do we do it even better? And if you want a kind of a question 1B, to
Yeah.
prompt that, if you want a way to prompt that, ask yourself, if after this change we could not do anything we were previously doing, what will we now do? It's a thought experiment because obviously you're not going to not do anything you did before. But if you say I can't do anything we were doing before, what would we do? Again, kind of like your Lego exercise, right? It forces new ideas. It forces you into uncertainty, and the ideas that pop up that way, versus kind of clinging to, well, how can we just sort of tweak what we were doing? So that's the first. The second, if you're feeling in a better position or a little bit more aspirational, I like to go with the impossible, which is, what can we do that I do not think we can currently do? Or what
Yeah.
is my impossible goal? And really, it's going to be the goal that you're going to immediately say yes, but to. Like, oh, I think we should, expand our operations into this neighboring state. Yeah, but we can't do that. Okay, well, what if you could, right? And then you start
Or you did.
playing. And maybe you don't do that, but it opens up the creativity. So if you're kind of struggling or new, maybe start with just how do we make things better. If you're feeling a little more aspirational, a little more positive, a little more connected with your team, then all right, what's our impossible goal? Instead of just looking at this change as a hindrance or something to get through, how can we set a huge goal that when we look at it, we're like, I don't even know how we're going to do that, but man, it's going to be fun to try.
So we're also touching on this, but we haven't said it out loud. We've been talking about the leaders in improv, leaders and leading this way. But the leaders have got to get their teams to embrace improv, to play
Mhm.
along with what we're describing. Otherwise, the leader goes nowhere.
Yeah.
So what do leaders do to get their team to think more, yes, and improv?
Well, the first thing we've been talking about this whole conversation, we just ask, right? It's not about telling them what to do or getting them on board. People feel on board and motivated and inspired when they feel involved. And so if you ask them questions, listen to their answers, and then do something with the answers, right? The worst thing
Yeah.
I could do is get your input and then completely ignore it. Now, if I get your input and can't use it for whatever, if I then come back and be like, look, we appreciate your input. Here's why we can't do that. I think you'd still feel respected. But if I take your ideas and then incorporate them, then you feel like, oh, I have some autonomy. I have some influence. Like, yeah, I'm on, but this is part of my plan, not just the leader's plan. So I think that's the first most important step is get them involved and ask them. And then when you start asking them to take action, are you making it okay for them to make mistakes and fail? Right? This is psychological safety.
Yeah.
Or especially if they're stepping into uncertainty, right? If it's their job that they're supposed to be doing and qualified to do and they make a mistake, of course you have to correct. But if you're asking them to expand themselves, to try something new, to try new ideas, you got to create that environment where if they make a mistake, it's a learning opportunity and not something that they get lambasted for.
Well, I was just going to say that. Even though you may have to correct them, you don't do the shutdown. You
Yes.
still give them the freedom. Thank you for your suggestion. Wow, that was great. Yeah, but
Mhm.
you move on, right? Because otherwise, if you clamp back down, they won't come back out again and play with you.
Oh yeah, and the early ones, like it sets the tone. So if their first couple times they try and get yeah butted or shot down, yeah, they're never gonna try
No.
again. This is why this is why one of the subtitle bullet points of my upcoming book is transform apathy to excitement. For a long time, I thought, as someone who talks about change and leadership, that my goal was to help leaders overcome change hostility and change resistance and get that to acceptance. Then I
Mm-hmm.
realized it's actually much more powerful is to turn apathy into excitement because when someone's resistant or hostile, it at least is data for you. You have something to respond to. But I think the much bigger problem in the world is change apathy. I think so many employees are just they're just checked out. They're just going through the
Yeah.
motions, right? This is quiet quitting. This is doing enough to do your job. And I've been there, right? I've been at jobs. I'm like, it's a paycheck.
Yeah.
But how can you turn that? And I think that's where the yes and comes in, and the listening and the involvement and the saying yes and to the answers is how we get our teams from apathetic to being not just on board but excited about the change, the initiative, the process.
Well, and I think part of it is, especially right now as we start the new year, we're in the deep of the winter seasons. It feels like Groundhog Day. Everything's the same day, the same work. So part of it is breaking the apathy to not make it feel like the same day. Any tips on how improv helps us do that, to bring freshness to our workday and freshness to our environment?
Yeah, it's the creativity, I think. I mean, the reason I'm still doing improv after 30 years from graduating college when I did it is just too much fun to not. And the reason it's fun is because improv is just pure creative expression. As we said, right? You're just blurting out ideas. And so are you as a leader creating opportunities for your people to tap into and apply their creativity? Because that is where it leads to the flow state, it's what leads to engagement. Or even if not, are you as an employee finding opportunities where you can be creative? And that could be as simple as 5 or 10 minutes of free writing before you start working. You've got your work to do, write down, set a timer, and don't let the pen stop. This is the key. This is how you know you're being creative, is where you just keep writing. But just
Yes.
write, answer the prompt. What do I really want to do for the next hour? Now, we all have responsibilities. You can't always do what you want to do. But
Mhm.
just the act of expressing taps you into a part of you that for most people has been dormant for years. And the more you tap into that, the more engaged you'll feel. And some of those ideas that pop up in those writing sessions will be things you can build off of and apply and get more engaged with.
So what got you into improv? Where did your journey begin to say, I'm going to do improv for a living, mom and dad?
Well, that was a fun conversation. Well, funnily enough, you would think after 30 years of doing it that it was love at first sight or love at first knowledge. It wasn't. Uh, it's I did theater in high school, but I went to college to get a engineering degree, and I'm like, well, it's a good school. It's going to be too much work. I can't do theater. That's like 5 nights a week, 4 hours a night. And then my friend freshman year said to me, "Hey, Avish, you're funny. You should join Without a Net," which was the campus group on improv group.
Mhm.
And my immediate response to him was, "Yes, but." I said, like, "Yeah, but I don't think I'd be good at improv. I've only ever done scripted theater. I'm not really interested." Now, I had never seen the group, but I was just like, I wouldn't be good at it, right? Because this is our default. So many of our default is to anything new is to be like, "Yeah, but I can't do that."
Yeah.
But my buddy Matt, fortunately, is a well, he would describe himself as persistent. I would say he was annoying, but he would not let this idea go. So for weeks, he just kept nagging me about improv, and finally, he sort of manipulated me into going to see a show at least. And I went to this show, and that was love at first sight. I saw it and was just like, that was amazing. And as fate would have it, the director stepped out at the end of the show and said, "Thank you for coming to our show." It was like their big spring show, and they're like, "If you liked what you saw, we're having auditions next week." I was like, "Oh," and it was just for fun. It wasn't like this is gonna be my life. And I auditioned, I got in, and then by senior year, again, the whisperer, right? It wasn't me, just like that corporate team building guy had told me. It was other people. "Oh, are you gonna keep performing after college? You're really good at this." And that sort of got the idea in my head. And again, I started after college. I'm just gonna start my own improv group. And because of the work, like with the Covey book and things like that, that's when I started to see. And when I decided it was time to move on from just the improv group, I was like, well, I've done some corporate team building work. I think I can make a go at this. And that's sort of how the speaking business launched from there.
So I love the name of your TED Talk, by the way. Why the world needs improv. So briefly, why does the world need more improv, Avish?
Because I think the world changes so fast that fixed, rigid thinking, I think, is what's causing so many of the problems for individuals and, frankly, in the world. I think if more people would simply let go and be flexible and in the moment. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go back to your idea. If you and I disagree, if I take the time to say yes and listen to your point of view, it doesn't mean at the end I can't go back and say, all right, well, we talked. Here's why I think my idea is still better. But I think most people approach a conversation like that from a yes but mindset. It's a not an it's a rigid, like, here's my idea and I'm gonna say yeah but and convince you and you're gonna convince me. And we're never just letting go and being in the moment and flexible. And I think so many of our problems on a small level and a large level could be solved if people would just start from a default mindset of yes and.
Right now, we probably got someone watching, a CEO, an executive, and they're trying to navigate that big, massive change. They are under the pressure gun. They can feel it. It's coming. The new year is here. What should be the mindset shift that could best help them to maybe prioritize, maybe shift the structure, change systems? What would you recommend for the big first step to have them move forward in 2026?
Explore and express your core, which is what is your identity as a CEO, but also as an organization? And in the face of any change, how can we lean into our core more? Because I think when a change happens, for so many of us, we look outside of ourselves. Oh, here's an opportunity. Here's something going on. In fact, you brought up, using Lego blocks,
Yeah.
and it is the exemplar case study I use in the book for this chapter. It is that Lego in the late '90s was struggling, and there was all video games and online, and
Yeah.
so they pivoted and they said, "Well, we're gonna open theme parks and we're gonna create digital things," and the business tanked and it almost went bankrupt. And then they got a new CEO, and his first order of business was saying, "Look, we are a block company,
Yes.
and that's what we're gonna do." So they sold off and closed down things, and then doubled down on their blocks. Record profits, stock went up and hugely successful again. Because in a time of change, the first leadership team looked outside of themselves. Oh, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
The new CEO said, "What's at our core?" And the more of that we do, and this is what every CEO listening, any leader listening, and even employee listening, what is at my core? What is at our core? And how can we express more of that in the new year in the face of this change?
Look, if there's a box of Legos, I'm on the floor building, man. I don't care how old I'll be. I am there still. You never know what's going to be built, man. You never know
Uh,
what's going to be built. Avish, I'm going to bring up your website here for a second, and we can talk again. You got the new book coming out, but what else are you going to learn about you when they hit the QR code and go right there?
Well, if you go there, you'll see the TEDx talk that we've talked about. You can watch the full TEDx talk. It's on my site, along with other videos, my demo, and information on my program. If you're doing a conference, a meeting where you want a speaker, kick things off, but also talk about yes and, that's kind of what I do. But I also go deeper, training workshops, working with employees or leadership teams, and even in a consulting capacity, how it can help you build a yes and culture so it kind of permeates. So all that information is up there. Reach out and drop me a line. Let me know let me know that you saw me here, and I'm happy to chat about any questions you have.
Definitely go check out it. Hit the QR code, scan it, get the phone right now, scan it, and go check it out and follow up with the Avish. So we're going to shift now some fun. We're going to have a little fun here. This is the second half. We're always unscripted, but I love now that we've gotten to know each other deeper. I can go deeper to crazy little places that we would never go. Now, you're doing improv. This is the rule for this game. If fear walked into the room disguised as a business, how would you address it? What would you do to deal with literally fear as a business?
I would first make the fear laugh, which is why I start my programs with silliness. I'll go into an improv groups, and the person hiring me will say, "Well, that's great with the improv, but do you think you could make the topic of your improvs our business issues?" I'm like, "No, because that's not fun, and we have to lower the resistance first." So first, I would make it fun, and then I would shrink the task I am asking fear to do as small as possible, so that it doesn't trigger the fight or flight response. Right? The smaller
Yeah.
the task, the smaller the ask, the easier it is for someone to take the first step. So get them silliness, get some laughs, and then say, "Okay, what's a small step?" And if that step seems too big, then okay, how do we make that a little smaller until it's like, okay, fine, I can do that, and then repeat, repeat, and repeat.
Avish, this has been wonderful. What, as you look at 2026, where do you think there's such a expression of being authentic these days, which plays into the improv mindset of being authentic in the moment? How far do you think that's going to go in 2026? Do you think we're going to go further and further, or we kind of hit the authentic and we're going to pull back a little bit?
I think it might dip at first, but I think it has to go up, at least for the people that want to succeed, because of the proliferation of AI. I think that, especially if you're on social media, all content, AI is everywhere and people are finding it so easy. And I use it for some things and it's great. It's a great tool. People are using it as a replacement, not as a tool.
Yes.
The flip side to that, though, is that, and I'm not even going to go so because AI is it's so powerful and so adaptive. I'm not even going to say it can never replace. In the immediate future, though, the one thing AI is going to have trouble replacing is authenticity. And if I am speaking from my heart and expressing my core, then that's going to connect with people in a way that AI currently does not. So I think authenticity is going to be so critically important in the short-term future.
Way to go. Right there with you, my friend. Way to go there. Avish, I'll make sure I get the last name here. We're going to try that again. Parashar?
That's it.
Avish Parashar, great to have you with us on Rock the Stage Show. We'll get you coming back in 2026, later on in 27 maybe, and see how that book's going for you.
I would love to do that. That would be awesome.
Thanks for being here today on Rock the Stage Show. Rock the Stage Show, always unscripted, but sometimes we even go really, really unscripted with improv night. That's great. We ought to have him come back and actually do an improv set with us and bring some friends along and play on Rock the Stage Show. The show is how it's really done. Maybe get the dinger out. Wouldn't that be great, that little dinger? That's going to do it for this edition of Rock the Stage Show. We want you to come on back next week. Join us again for another new exciting episode. You never know who's going to show up, from leadership to film directors to actors or writers, producers. Until then, have a great week. I'm the Trigger, Rich Bontrager, and we'll see you here.